Want to hear about you want to hear about something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would that be like a mesh or something?
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Actually, that's something we can look at. Do you if I show you the site list PDF, will you point it out to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, feel free. I want to build on your curiosity here.
No.
This is the whole point. Do you remember what page it was on, Brian? That's asking a lot. I know.
Probably 2 or 3 down. Is it the second page? No. It's in the bottom. Yeah, it's the last one on the top right corner.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any idea about that before I just launch into this? What would we start with, based on that initial form?
Cube.
Yeah, box, cube, right? Okay, good. Okay. Then what's happening to that form, just in general? Let's say that you guys learned this method from Swisher, right? When you're gonna draw a human figure, you don't just start with the eyes and then draw everything out. You kind of draw cylinders and boxes and an armature, right? You kind of create a scaffold for it, right? What would the kind of scaffold form be for that? If we start with a box at the base, if we start with a cube, what happens to it as it goes up vertically? It tapers. Okay, good. So we could do a taper box. Okay. What else happens to it? It gets smaller. It twists a little bit. Okay. We always want to start with basic transformations before we get too fancy with it. Okay. So yeah. So let's go ahead, and I'll just try to crank one of these out here. I might need to restart my machine though, because I seem to have lost all of my window. Yeah, geez. Already. How many times did you guys crash this over the week? Not really? Oh man. Mine crashed numerous times. It was very bothersome. I may need to restart 3DS here. Apologies. Yes, but anyway, so we can start though with a box. There is one thing that I didn't. There's a modifier that I didn't show you that will sort of help with this, and we'll see how far it gets us here. And it's actually one I was going to talk about today. So thankfully this kind of cuts out the middleman. We can just talk about it right away. There's a modifier. There's a noise modifier. Did anybody play with that? I didn't talk about it, so you might not even know it existed. But let's look at it in terms of a plane. And this actually gets us to another thing. Planes are really useful because you can start with them as just a simple sort of like topological field, right? We have a plane. It has 16 points on it. We can adjust the number of segments to it. It basically becomes a mesh for us to work with. It becomes a surface for us to work with. Okay, and we can do crazy things with it, like add a ripple modifier to it, which actually just gives us. We can play with the amplitudes of it, and the wavelength determines the motion of the ocean. And so the plane's very nice because it gives us a surface to start with. And again, as I always say, right, the more segments you've got, the more resolution you get. It slows it down, right? But it does actually end up creating a smoother transition. You can also play with the gizmo of the ripple. That sounds really weird. And you can move the centroid. You can move that ripple around in space to get the kind of thing that you want. You can adjust the amplitude of it. So if you guys have ever, wanted to do these kinds of things in your studio projects, this is one easy way to do it, right, is the ripple modifier. It gives me a great place, though, to talk about the noise modifier. Now that I've got this surface that I've meshed, if you throw in a noise modifier, this just gives you random garbage. You have a strength in the X, Y, Z. The most interesting right now is what? The Z, right? So if I begin to add some amplitude to this into Z, nothing's really happening yet. We got to play with the settings here. But this just gives us. You guys remember seed from Grasshopper? It's the random number that starts the calculation with different seeds. We get different output. if I experiment with different seeds, I just get different like configurations of noise. And I can play with that scale too. I can make a double scale, 200. Actually, that might be the opposite of what I want. Yeah, it's the opposite of what I want. So the more you play with that scale, you can get this effect here. And it's just noise. That's all it is. It's just pseudo-random noise. There's different settings for it. We don't talk about this, but fractal noise adds a bit more complexity to it. See that? Like it's kind of smooth. Now it's got like additional kind of ridges in it. You can have X and Y noise, so I can actually have a jitter in different axes. Like I can really mess this stuff up. So it becomes more crumbly, like a piece of paper. All right? So with that, we can talk about how we would actually do our liquor bag. Drugs are bad. What's that? Yeah, liquid courage bag. Okay, so we got our box, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some. We need a lot of geometry, right? Because we're going to be brown bagging it here. That's right. So we need some of that, and especially in the like height parameter. So then we've got a lot of information there, and I could go ahead and actually. This actually might have complicated things for me, but let me back up. What we really need to do is give it a couple of twists, right? I think like Dakota mentioned, that it has kind of a twist and it has a taper. So let's taper some of these at the top, and we'll just kind of eyeball this. We're not going to really be in super control over it, but good enough. It's a demo, so we're not very precise. Is the issue, and then I'll just sort of start to twist this a bit, twist that a bit. Close enough, we think? All right. Then what I want to do is go into Edit Mesh, and I'm going to select. I'm going to start selecting these other, basically everything about the base. Okay. Because I want to keep the base pretty good. This isn't perfect, but it's pretty close. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, remember, I want to add some information after the fact, so I actually might want to look at tessellating it, or changing it to polys or something like that. Let's see what tessellate gives us here. Okay, so good. So I'm gonna add some more. Add some more tessellations. I don't know why it's flickering like that. That is really troubling. Let's see here. What's that? I guess. I don't know. There we go. So if we have zero tension, we can increase the number of iterations, and we get more meshes. Okay, we get more stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another edit mesh modifier to it because I want to edit it like further down the stack here. And actually I want to go ahead and select all the vertices here. Actually, no, take that back. Okay, so I'm going to select vertices at the top. Like, what are the ones that are most, kind of, it gets really kind of crumbly and it gets less crumbly as it goes, right? So I'm going to go ahead and we haven't changed before, but you can do soft selection. So what it means is I can select something, and then I can essentially increase that selection, but there's kind of a fall off. So like these are like really selected. These are kind of sort of selected, and then they're kind of not. Okay, so you get kind of like you get kind of a gradient effect. When I apply a modifier to it, like noise, then the effect of it is actually going to be propagated differently down the stack, and you'll see that it's this in a second here. So it's like, see how the top is more noisy than the bottom? And let's go ahead and throw a little bit of Z in there too, just for good measure. Okay, so then if I go in, and let's just go ahead and go to edit mesh, so I can just look at this thing as it is. And when that renders, you're not going to see all that other stuff, right? You're just going to see that transition because that's just what just the mesh underneath it. Okay. Now that's not exactly what we did. In fact, I think if I looked at, let me close this off here. I think if I look at this closer, it looks like there's something that happens here and it kind of propagates down a little bit. So I actually probably want fewer polygons in the Z and more at the top. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of want the noise to kind of propagate. There's too much information from row to row here. We want less rows. Okay. But so to go back here, we had the box object. And we only had a few height segments, right? Then we modified it a bit. We went into the base mesh, and we selected some additional sort of candidates that we wanted to add more information to. We wanted to tessellate it. So we did that, operating on the edge with polygons and a zero tension. And that gives us a square, kind of quads. Then we went to edit mesh. We did a soft selection. We started by selecting these, then like vertexes. Use soft selection. We pass that up to a noise modifier, and then we just have an edit mesh just to kind of kill that stack. In case you're curious, like soft selection was kind of a curveball I just threw at you. Check this out, where soft selection might be of use. Remember the example I showed you with like the ripple? The ripple you don't have much control over, right? The ripple's just rippling, like it gives you these kind of like amplitude waves. But what if you want like a bulge in something? You want like a bulge like right there. Okay, and you want it to be a certain size and a certain dimension, the ripple modifier is going to be tough to like deal with. Okay, soft selection is your friend. So you go to edit mesh, you go to vertex level. You can even pick a point, and you go into soft selection, and there's your. So you can see it. It's just like a diagram here, right? Check this out. If I move this up and down. Remember, it's like sort of selected, less selected, not selected at all, right? The middle one gets moved to the full amount, and then everything else propagates out from that. Like it actually tapers out from that. And that you get that bulge like in there, okay? And you can do that. Like I could go in and I can pick another one, and I can do the same thing. I could pick corner, move it down a little bit, right? And I can start to sculpt this. It's another way to do it. We saw FFDs, we saw all these other kind of deformations. Soft selection is another method of deformation. It works with anything, basically. You can do it with polygons, you can do it with, any kind of selection. Let me back this out a little bit. If I go into that edit mesh again, let me show you this. So soft selection, right? You can control the fall off, which is the distance that you get. You can control the kind of pinch in the bubble, so you can actually control. So if I do this, I get kind of a mesa kind of effect, or kind of a navel effect. So there's different ways. If you adjust that curvature, that's the kind of fall off effect you'll get with your selection. So you have tons of control over this, and it doesn't have to be in the ground plane or whatever. If I go for this thing, this box here, do it to a box. So you go in and edit mesh. And I can do it right here, and I can do it in the Y even, Okay? So it can be really useful. Wow, that is really messed up. So there you go. Okay. So it works with anything. Brian, is that that long-winded explanation so to answer your question about the bag? Okay. Do you guys have questions about that? That was something I wanted to cover later, because I think that's something. I think the noise modifier can be really useful, guys. This is another example that I like. If you had something, let's say you have a rock wall or something, right? You can go in and you can go to edit mesh again. Same thing, really, I guess, and just kind of increase that fall off range. And maybe I want a different kind of fall off here. And then you can apply the noise modifier to it. Oops, how is my setup?
Can you change the direction of the fall off?
The direction of it.
Say if you were to select one of the corners, you want to go diagonally across the surface rather than...
Well, it would go diagonally if you selected it. Yeah, it's round though is the thing. It's always like round, basically. That's kind of a bummer about it. But you can even you can manually do this kind of like edge distance thing too. You can actually manually like select that as well. You get kind of fall off, but yeah. So and then you can just apply. So if you want to like erode something or give it the sense that it's going from like a nice kind of concrete wall to one that's kind of crumbly, you can kind of add this effect to it, which is really can be really nice. So if you just want to have a corner that's got that effect, same as our bag example, really. But so you can just do that, and you can have it start from the top of the wall. I don't know if you guys can read that as well. It's kind of dark, but okay. Okay. Good. Any other forms you guys have questions about? Actually, I didn't do that in the Y there, but anyway.
There's one farther down the
Okay. Yeah. These two. There we go. Which can you point it out to me? You know which page it was on?
I think it's near the last page.
Oh, okay. Cool. What do we got?
It looks like a crumpled, almost crumpled bag.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. So what can we do? I mean, now that we kind of did this last piece, I think you have all the tools for it. So what would you do?
Sphere with noise.
Pretty much, yeah. If you really, really adjust that Z, that kind of puckering, that's what's going to give you the sort of ridges that you want, right? Like in a brain. Actually, you know what? Nothing's better than just doing it. Let's see what we get. Let's see here. So let's see what noise gets us. It's interesting because the sphere has got stuff going on in all directions. Oh, here's an interesting thing too. If you're going to apply the noise piece, you really have to apply it. You have to add an edit mesh and apply it because you want to be adding noise to the vertexes. Does that make sense? Like you got to be moving something. If you just apply noise to the object, it's going to jump around like it's had too much coffee. Like it's not going to deform until you get to that topological level. Okay. What a terrible interface though. You got to scroll down this little list and pick your little thing out. Okay. And I think this is going to be, we're going to want roughness, and I think let's just see what we get here. If we have to increase the strength of it, we will. And that might be the most roughness that I'm going to get here. Okay. The trick is if you do it too much, you don't even have a circle in it. You don't even have a sphere anymore. You know. But you know, I think you if you have more. If you have more, like geometry in the sphere and a little bit less noise, I think you'll get that. You know, it's actually wonder if I go back in time and add more information. If that's not gonna. Oh yeah, check that out. Because the first 32 points or whatever had the noise applied to it. The other part of it never existed before it was applied to it. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, but I think if we applied this idea to it, we would probably get the effect you want. Just might need to adjust. Just might need to adjust it somewhat. That's the thing I love about Studio Max, alright, is that if we don't like what we see, we can always just graphically adjust things. And that's actually going to get me to the topic of today, which is actually going to be talking about animation. So I told you guys everything in Studio Max is parametric because it's going to be animated at some point. It's intended as an animation tool. So we haven't talked about that yet, and we haven't talked about the potential for that in like design. How many of you guys know who like the architect Greg Lynn is? Have you guys heard of Greg Lynn? I know that a few of you do. Greg Lynn gets a bad rap because he's kind of considered to be the founder of, or the poster boy for like the blob architecture. But it's still kind of an important mark in time, and I think that even though our craft has gotten better and our tools have gotten better, we're still kind of in the blob era, or in the shadow of the blob or something. Right? It's like a horror movie. The blob was kind of thrown out as an insult, and it's this idea that it was all form, or that it like had no form, right? It was something that was out of your control, right? In the movie The Blob is this like gelatinous thing that like swallows everything, and kind of oozes through things, and so I think that was what people kind of saw. Lynn did his architecture. His architecture was really based on Studio Max and programs like Maya. It was based on animation software. Like they didn't have Rhino. They didn't have like SolidWorks or like sophisticated tools, and if they did, he didn't know how to use them. Like he was building on a tradition of computer animation that he encountered, and he was interested in the potential of animation as a generator for architecture. Okay, and he was the Jackson Pollock of using animation to make architecture. Like just as Jackson Pollock might have been the first person to really realize the potential of like throwing paint. And everybody else who throws paint, whether they're good or bad, always gets compared to Jackson Pollock, right? Greg Lynn was the first guy to really do animation and really get noticed for it. And the first project that he really got noticed for was the Korean Presbyterian Church in New York City. And this is not the best display of it, but it does have this form which emerges most formally from the side of it. This was a sequence, is a form that he started with, that he applied a sequence of transformations to in sort of like an animation, and then he like captured those forms and basically built them. And it was one of these buildings. It was one of the first buildings to really get into like mass customization. All these things had to be sized and cut separately, and they didn't really have a lot of the software for it. I mean, a lot of this was like manual, but this was the form that he wanted, okay? And you look at this, now this is built. So like 1999, he was actually like building this stuff. If you talk to like Chris Bjorkram, I know some of you guys have had his courses or have seen his lectures. His lectures like essentially start with Dunescape, right? As the kind of introduction to digital fabrication from like soup to nuts. What year was Dunescape constructed? Does anybody know? You haven't seen the lecture as many times as I have. Okay. 2002, right? Post 9/11. So think about that. That wasn't even that long ago, right? But it was like 11 years ago. This predates that by like 3 years, and it's built, and it's a building. It's not like a bunch of timbers at PS1, okay? So he was already confronting a lot of the things that we have to confront like nowadays, but with like with like a flint and steel, basically. Okay, so this is a significant project. Like whether you like it or not, it's significant. He has this kind of folded plate interior. It's not bad, but it was something else. I mean, they really hadn't done things like this, and Lynn kind of came along with sort of like a methodology, and added some know-how. It's pretty well documented, actually. These are most pictures I've ever seen of it. Okay. But what we're going to talk about today, I need to find this. Not Yokohama. Where is it? These are not quite in order, so I have to. No, not Cardiff. Hang on a minute. Yeah, it's like the second link that comes up. Okay. So some of what we're going to be talking about today is sort of regarded to this. Now look at this. This by today's standards is pretty simplistic, right? This is something that you can sit down with and crank out in like Rhino. That's not really even that well detailed. Like it seems very simple. But the method that he used to define it was not to say like scientific, but you know how I've seen a lot of studio projects where people try to analyze like the paths people take and like how fast they get somewhere and whatever, and it's all kind of BS. Lynn used particles to simulate it, and so at least it was slightly less BS. At least he could study the sort of speed of something over time, and then he could plot that. Okay, and so that's what he did. He was actually looking at this sort of pedestrian bridge as a combination of forces over time that then created a form. So you can use your imagination and think about these kind of bouncing balls, these kind of things. And and then here again is a series of studies of things going this way, and you end up with like this form. If you trace those paths and you skim them over, you end up with this like form. Okay, this is a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to first start by talking about just basically animation. How do you animate something in Studio Max? And then I'm going to dig into some of the physics tools that are built into Studio Max, and we're going to run some of these things. We're going to look at cloth simulations. We're going to look at particle simulations, which can be used to do a lot of things, fluid simulations, and rigid body simulations, which is like marbles of that, or like stacks of cans that you knock over. Okay, and none of this is architecture yet. These are methods, right? This is advanced digital methods, but these are all kind of tools in the belt that you might recognize out there when you look at projects or when you have an idea for something. I think I've had a few of you for Studio. A lot of us think in terms of forces, or we sort of talk about operations happening on a form. Well, now you can actually make those operations like happen in 3D space with some amount of like control. You can say this is a stronger force than that force, or this force comes from the left and that force comes from the right. Okay, and the computer can like solve it for you, and when you're done, you actually have the geometry. It's all the stuff that happens on trace paper, but now it's like in silica. Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick thing, and then we're going to take a break because I realize we've already been here for half an hour, and it's 90 degrees in here. Okay, so go ahead and get Max just cleared out. Go to a new file, scrub it. Same drill as usual. I'm going to show you something, and you watch it, and then I'll do it again, and then you try it. Okay, so don't try to follow me at the exact same time. I want to make sure everybody gets this. Okay. So I'm just going to make a form, and I think for now I'm just going to make a sphere in the center, and I'm going to turn it down maybe to 32 segments. That's the default setting. 64 is too much. Okay. An animation in Max can be very complicated. There's all kinds of settings with it. There's multiple windows, like interactive solvers, et cetera, et cetera. But when it boils down to it, it can be very, very, very simple. Okay, so you turn on auto key, and you hit the key, and then this is your timeline. You move your timeline to another point in time, and you move your object, and maybe even do something to it, like change the size of it. And you click key again, click auto key, and you're done. And now check this out. The program's going to fill in all the steps. It's going to tween it in from one position to another position. It's going to tween the scale change. Okay? So that, on its most like basic level, is how you would do an animation. I can go in and just prove another point here. Go in the box. I'm going to auto key it. I'm actually going to... now you see if I go back, that sphere started there, right? I'm going to auto key the box, because you need to key every object. Move it. I'm going to rotate it. And rotate it. Oh, and actually I screwed up because of... Well, wait a minute. Maybe this will work. Yeah, okay. The only thing is you got to be careful about... You got to make sure that if you're going to make the transformations, you need to be on the frame where you make the transformations. So that's a gotcha. Because the auto key is going to start to insert keys as you go. Let's see if that works. Yeah, sometimes you don't even need that. I hit the key button because sometimes I worry that auto key is not making keys, but it looked like it did. So you can morph like anything. You can morph the shape changing. You can change where it is. You can change the like size of it, the scale of it. Go ahead and play with that for a little bit. Spheres are kind of bad because they don't really show rotation, right? Because you rotate a sphere, it looks like the same as any other size. If you texture mapped it though, right, it would look like something. I see Gil's got a teapot. That's a good object to play with. You can animate anything. Any setting that has a little slider on it, like the ones we've looked at, basically. So like if I even added a bend modifier to this, I can animate the bend modifier if I wanted to. Go ahead and give me a yell if it's not things aren't working for you guys. I'll help you out. Yeah, totally. Let me go ahead and just start a new scene here. So the steps. So you make an object. Let's just start with a box for now. You turn on auto key. It's probably important. I would make sure your slider's at 0. Click the key, and then you see you get little boxes down there. Those are your keys. And the key is just the data, the stored animation data. It's the position, the rotation, whatever. Okay, then you change the slider to another frame, and you do something to your target. And then you click auto key to turn it off. Red means you're recording, and that's it basically. You get the sequence. It does. So I'll throw a modifier on here. So let's see. What do I want to do? Let's do noise. So I can go in and I've got a modifier on there, and I'm going to let me get some information into this thing. Okay, so Yashka, so I got a modifier. I'm gonna go auto key. I'm gonna key it, and then if I move it and I change something about it, let's just change the frequency or something. You see how they turn red? These little things here? That means we just animated something. And then if I auto key off. Oh, actually, okay, so I was recording. Oops. Let's go back to auto key. So let's see here. Okay, so now it's recording. If I go to another frame and I change it, it should generate a key. Yeah, I see the little box that like appears under my playhead here. Okay, so then yeah, the noise is changing. It's not doing a whole lot, but it is. You can see the numbers here. You're changed from 5 to 10. I just don't think I have enough scale there for what's happening. Let me adjust it. Maybe I need to adjust the scale, actually. Let's do that. Let's go to auto key. If you change it and change it back, then you get the recording mode. And then let's go and let's change it to something different here. And let's see if that's going to do it. Yeah, there we go. Again, anything that is a that's an element, especially the ones that have the little like the I don't know what they call these, like like the little spinners, can be animated, and the keys are left behind. You can move the keys around if you actually click them and select them. You can change the rate at which the transformations happen. Like I said, this thing goes really deep. I don't want to get too deep into it. I think the most important thing though is just to remember in architecture, transformations are absolutely key. Like rotate, move, scale. You can do so much with that, right? That was all that was all the Renaissance. That was all of like the Greeks and everyone before that. It was just basically about transforming shapes. Okay. Okay. So everybody have questions about this? I want to show you one thing, and then we'll quit just for a minute. Okay. We'll take a break. Okay. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to show you something. Let me show you something. Okay. Where you get into Lin territory. So, so moving stuff around, animating stuff is not that cool. I mean, that's just animation, right? You're not often, maybe for diagrams or for a client, maybe you're showing how some parts go together or something like that, but less useful. I'm not very excited about that, like, personally. I'm going to start with a sphere, and I'm going to auto key it, and I'm going to move it. Oh, wait a minute, I did that backwards again. Okay, scroll to 100. I'm going to move it, and I'm going to do some transforms here. I'm going to stretch it. And I'm going to rotate it. Let's just stop there. Okay, so then I turn off auto key. Okay, so stuff happens. Yay, right? Oh, you can also go in, I could always go in at one frame here and turn on auto key again. And nothing says I can't, make another adjustment in the middle of that, turn off auto key, and now it's going to incorporate that into the sequence. You don't have to do it once. You can always go into that object and change the keys in that, all right? So it's not like you do it one time and that's it. And again, I can change the location of when that transformation happens. I mean, if I move this, now it's going to happen really fast, and then it's going to happen real slow, right? Because the difference in the keyframes is what's going to change it. But that's not what I wanted to show you. Where you get into architecture, or where you can, and where it can be really interesting, especially as a diagramming tool or like a schematic design tool, is if you take all of those transformations and you display them at the same time. So if you go to Tools and you go to Snapshot, you can say, I want a range of snapshots from 0 to 100 and make me 10 copies. And you can play with the parameters of that. And in fact, I will, because I am your teacher. And we will make 100 copies. Oh yeah, these are all objects, guys. That's what's cool about this. Oh, you have everything. You have the raw stuff to do whatever you want with. You want to boolean them together. You want to fab those. You want to take a shape and morph it. There you go, right? So if you think about the transformations as a beginning state and an end state, or as a series of operations over a set amount of time, this will just produce all of the interpolated, geometry for you. And that's what we got. That's sort of what we ended up with, or what happened with Lin's thing. That's okay. So this is I have a shape, right? I had an edit mesh, and I apply some transformations to it, and let's say I do 4 snapshots of it. There you go. All right. And that's probably what he did.
Yeah. So
because why not?
If you're reporting and you do that, can you adjust those shapes and move them around and it'll put that into the reporting?
No, but since I've fixed those in space now, I could sure animate these if I wanted to. I could do all kinds of tweens and things with them. I mean, what's cool about it is it just bakes it. You get all of the geometry back. Okay, so depending upon how imaginative you are and how three-dimensionally you think in space, right? It can be really interesting, right? You can get a lot of interesting forms out of these. Okay, let's take a break so that we can get hydrated, etc. I'll see you guys back in 10. Okay, so 10 till. Think of questions for me when we come back if you have them. Okay?